What is up, everybody? This is JP representing jpfitnesspro.com. Today's video is going to be about strength and how it's related to hypertrophy. There's a lot of misconceptions with hypertrophy training, gaining muscle, and that there's a hypertrophy rep range, and people don't exactly know like what causes hypertrophy in the sense of your layman, your average person. They think, again, like there's a hypertrophy rep range, or this rep range, gains muscle, and this one's for strength, when that's not necessarily true at all. So I'm going to cover hypertrophy, kind of cover what it is, and then how strength can affect it. Hypertrophy is a response to a stimulus. It is not like a performance measure like strength or muscular endurance. When someone is strong, it's in relatively to themselves, compared to themselves, or compared to other people. So it's a performance-based measure. Same thing with muscular endurance. There's reps done, or it's for time, like a number. While as hypertrophy, you can measure muscle mass, it's not a performance-based measure. Hypertrophy, or gaining muscle, is just a response to a stimulus. And the stimulus, to help you gain muscle, is a moderately heavy or heavy loads taken relatively close to failure. And if you're going, really heavy, you can gain a muscle even 4, 5, 6 reps short of failure. If you're, let's just say you're training with, you're doing 4 reps. You stop at 4 reps, but it's of an 8 or 9 rep max of that amount of weight. So you can still gain muscle doing that. If you go with light loads though, start heading south of your 60% of your 1 rep max, you go lighter than that, you're gonna start having to get relatively closer and closer to failure. And if it's really light, you have to go to failure to see the same hypertrophic response as you would with heavier weight. So again, hypertrophy is just a response to a stimulus. A rep range doesn't make you gain muscle. You can train in the 8 to 12 rep range, but if you're stopping in the 8 to 12 rep range of a load that you could have done 50 repetitions, you're not going to gain any muscle. So it's not the rep range. And again, you can train in the 4 to 6 rep range and gain a lot of muscle if you have a good program based around that 4 to 6 rep range. Now, when you look at how to gain muscle, the reps set between 7 and 15 reps is a good rep range if you have the appropriate RPE to accumulate volume, which again, once you have the proper stimulus, volume is going to determine that magnitude of adaptation. So if you have a program, hopefully your program can intelligently increase volume over time. That's going to help you make more and more gains. So again, knowing what hypertrophy is, well, how does strength training in the lower rep ranges with heavier weight affect hypertrophy? So again, hypertrophy is just a response to lifting heavy or moderately heavy, relatively close to failure, or light loads to failure. And to an extent, more volume equals greater magnitude of gains. And I say to an extent because you can't just keep stacking volume forever. I can't, progressively increase sets to 200 sets on a muscle group. That'd be ridiculous, and you'd probably see negative effects from that. So strength, when you have an increase of strength, your 1 rep max increases, or like a low sub rep max. Let's just say you do a 3 rep max testing instead of a 1 rep max. It doesn't matter. But if you're getting stronger by training in those low rep ranges with heavier weight, your maximal repetitions are going to be able to increase. You're going to be able to do more loads in that 7 to 15 rep range, which means you can accumulate more volume over time. Let me give you an example. Let's just say you stay in that 7 to 15 rep range, or 8 to 15 rep range, or let's just say the typical 8 to 12 rep range, and you never train heavy. You're going to have a lot more troubling of a time getting stronger than someone who also includes heavy work in their training. That's, a simple analyzation of that. So someone who trains heavier is going to be able to get stronger. Someone who stays in the 8 to 12 rep range isn't going to be able to gain as much strength, and this has been demonstrably proven. So that person who stays in the 8 to 12 rep range, let's just take a bench press, isn't going to be able to increase their bench as much. The person who trains in the 8 to 12 or trains at lower rep ranges is going to be able to increase their 1 rep max more over time, relatively to themselves, like percentage based. Maybe not compared to the other person, but percentage based by themselves. So if you increase your 1 rep max, let's just say you take 300, let's just say your 1 rep max on bench press is now 300 pounds because you've been training for a while. 50% of that is obviously 150 pounds, and 200 pounds would be about 66% of that, and give or take a little bit more from there. If I had to do the math, it'd be 60, 120, 180, 240. So 240 pounds would be 80% of your 1 rep max. Now, someone who isn't as strong as you but always trains in the 8 to 12, 80% of their 1 rep max might not be as much. It might just be 200 pounds. And because they don't strength train, it's really not going to go up a ton over time, because again, you need to, it's all about specificity. People who train at lower rep ranges with heavier weight are going to get stronger. So because the other person's 80% of their 1 rep max, 80% 1 RM is higher, that sub-maximal repetitions lifted is going to be for more volume. So that's exactly how strength can affect hypertrophy. It affects it indirectly. If you can lift more weight for the same amount of repetitions as someone else, or if you increase that, you might not be able to right now, but if you increase that for yourself, you're going to have more volume with these two stimuli, lifting moderately heavy loads relatively close to failure. Again, you can't be like 30 reps away from failure. You got to, somewhere around 5 repetitions, something like that. Again, that's a whole nother video, but yeah, so that's how strength affects hypertrophy, and that's exactly why you should not just ignore strength training. The 8 to 12 rep range might be a good rep range to accumulate volume, but again, if you just completely ignore the lower rep ranges, you're not going to be able to increase your sub-max repetitions or increase the load you use for your 8 to 12 rep schemes as much as someone who does also strength train. Because again, if you can lift heavier weight, you can lift more weight at sub-maximal loads to an extent. Again, at some point, if you go to higher repetitions, it's going to now become a different type of adaptation that you're going to need. So again, if you guys have any questions, comments, please post them down below. I just thought I'd tackle this topic because a lot of people seem to get confused on it, but I will see you guys in the next video.